I got a couple of minutes after here, and we want to make sure we have plenty of time for the presentation as well as a discussion afterwards, Q&A and other questions people might have. So good afternoon, everyone, or morning, depending on where you are. Looks like we have people from all around the country, including Hawaii, I saw there. Thank you for joining SAMHSA's Office of Recovery webinar series. Today's topic is generational trauma to generational healing in Native communities. During Recovery Month, we're hosting a webinar series to educate and provide key discussions in many recovery spaces. My name is Paul Kalchbrenner. I currently serve as a public health advisor to the Office of Recovery. And before that, for almost 2 years, I worked at the Office of Tribal Affairs and Policy, where I was a GPO in the TOR program, the Tribal Opioid Response Program, which was a great privilege, really enjoyed it. I also have Kristen Harper and Grace Lee from the Office of Recovery assisting me. And so for each week during Recovery Month, there's a theme for the week. This week, our focus is on the recovery dimension of community, looking at the importance of having caring communities to support the recovery of people with mental health conditions and substance use disorders. As we know, we do not recover alone. And I should say I'm a person in long-term recovery myself. The recovery journey can be easier with support of friends, family, peers, and other communities. In my experience working with tribes, I've witnessed the power that cultural connection can bring. We often hear about how the opposite of addiction is connection, and I've seen culture and community help grow that connection and a sense of belonging, and that really helps people get into the recovery journey and dealing with whatever issues cause their we're at the root of their issues. There are many community resources such as support groups and cultural, religious, and other social networks that can help support recovery. Life in recovery can be challenging, but with a supportive community, recovery is possible. Here at SAMHSA, we are celebrating Recovery Month, which is a national observance held every September to promote awareness of the power of recovery for mental health and substance use conditions. It celebrates the millions of Americans in recovery and recognizes the contributions and accomplishments of people in recovery, their loved ones and allies. Recovery events are celebrated around the nation and the world. During Recovery Month, we also applaud the dedication of service providers, states, and communities who champion recovery. Recovery Month is intended to counter stigma and instill hope in the American public that recovery is possible. The Office of Recovery is charged with advancing recovery across the nation in partnership with people with lived experience, their families, and communities impacted by mental health and/or substance use. This month, in addition to these many webinars, the office has two major events happening this month. Our Walk for Recovery, which was celebrated back on September 5th. And tomorrow actually is our Star Awards in the Gallery of Hope display, September 24th, which will also be live streamed. The office will also be releasing fact sheets throughout the month as well. Again, we thank you for your attendance and support during Recovery Month. So now we'll go to the brief disclaimer. Okay, the views, thoughts, and opinions reflected in this presentation are those of this session, including any handouts or related materials, being solely to the presenters and do not necessarily reflect the official views, policies, or positions of the U.S. federal government, the Department of Health and Human Services, or SAMHSA. Presenters in this session have no financial or other potential conflict or interest to disclose. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So I'm going to turn it over to our presenters in a minute here, but I'll just real brief. The team here includes Darian Chavada, who's a member of the Comanche Nation and director of the Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribal Opioid Response Project. In 2013, Darian graduated high school and enlisted in the U.S. Navy Reserves at the age of 17, which allowed him to serve his country over 2 combat deployments overseas while pursuing his education. Darian holds a Bachelor of Arts in Criminal Justice and a Bachelor of Sciences in Forensic Science from the University of Central Oklahoma, and has served as the Tribal Opioid Response Project Director since 2020. Darian has grown the project over the years to improve harm reduction programs, prevention, and recovery solutions to underserved communities across Oklahoma, resulting in the TOR project being awarded the 7th Generation Tribal Community Impact Award and 3 awards from White Bison. He serves on the advisory board for the Oklahoma Alliance for Recovery Resources, as well as being an active participant in multiple coalitions targeting substance use and mental health efforts. With him is Barry Batone, who's a member of the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes and is a peer recovery support specialist for the tribes and for the Opioid Response Project. Barry has 26 years of lived experience regarding substance dependency and 3 years of recovery experience. He is active in AA as well as facilitates White Bison curriculum in communities. His lived experience has contributed to establishing a robust harm reduction program to provide safer use supplies to communities throughout the nation and has contributed to aiding many people through their recovery journey. Again, thank you for attending. You can pose questions in the chat during the presentation, and we'll have time again for Q&A at the end of the presentation. We also want to make you aware and hope that you will fill out a short survey, evaluation survey, linked in the chat, and we'll remind you of this at the end as well, and ask that you please complete it. It helps our Office of Recovery and SAMHSA to get your feedback and ensure our activities have value. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Darian and Barry.
Hello, everybody. It is noon for us. I'm Darian, and then next to me is Barry. So we'll be, your facilitators along this little ride. We just wanted to introduce our program. So we are the Cheyenne and Arapaho Tribes Tribal Opioid Response Project. So we started a few years ago, and we're still growing and growing and growing. We aim to pretty much reduce the impact that the opioid crisis has had on our tribal communities and communities as a whole. And then we also do a lot of recovery support on the back end of, our prevention or harm reduction side as well. And so, if we can go to the next slide, that'll be great. So we do have, just core values of pretty much being a safe space for anybody to come to. We try to be judgment free because we do know that's the last thing somebody wants, to come into a place where they need help and then feel kind of judged or stigmatized or looked down upon. So we just want to, welcome people with open arms, and then also provide, repeat services. So we want to be dependable, and we want to be culturally relevant. And I think that's where we're growing a lot this year is culturally relevancy. Yeah. Can we go to the next slide, please? So to start with some of our services, also in the chat, somebody cannot see the slide, so it might be something. But to start our services, for mental health kind of awareness and services, we do serve a large service area. So counseling is not typically a short thing because some people will be transporting maybe an hour one way just to get to a counseling appointment. So we have been able to use Talkspace, which is telehealth counseling. So this way it does cover all of our tribal members that do need these services, because it is all virtual. And so we've seen that this will work better than an in-person counselor just due to our vast service area. And so this does work for anybody that's 13 and up, and they can pretty much do 2 video sessions with a counselor a month and then message them 24/7. And so we do see a lot of native counselors that are providing services on this app. And so that's why we kind of geared our mental health services on a virtual base, because we do peer recovery support. However, like I said, transportation is going to be one of our biggest issues in a lot of our communities. And so this is our alternative for mental health, and it has been pretty good so far. And so can we move to the next slide, please? With our prevention services, we do a lot of fitness. So we do know, your wellness, comes with spiritual, physical, mental, all kind of factors. And so physical fitness, we do a a lot of activities such as yoga, Zumba, meditations. And so this will help somebody while they're, at home. We do stream our yoga. And so that way they can do this stuff from the comfort of their own home. We also do Zumba classes in person, and then yoga with a treatment center actually that we work with for our tribe. And so we try to bring a holistic approach to recovery. And then also this does engage, the younger audience that may just be interested in dancing around doing Zumba, or our elders, we do chair yoga. And so this is just another piece to our recovery services. Next slide, please. For community education. So we're all about building community support, and pretty much making the community, we're shifting a community mindset, right? So there's a lot of stigma with harm reduction stuff. So Narcan, fentanyl test kits, and everything. But we've have a very strong relationship with our communities, and so now people obtaining Narcan or naloxone is very open. So we do training certifications for naloxone administration. We also have little cards that'll tell you opioid symptoms or opioid overdose symptoms, and then Narcan administration steps. So that way we can build a network of pretty much community lifesavers. And to date, from January until now, we have prevented 126 fatalities just from our community engagement. And people are comfortable telling us about them using Narcan or finding fentanyl in any of their substances, because we do have a good relationship and a good engaged community around us. And so we do these Narcan trainings weekly. And then we also do a lot of events in the communities, whether it's just hanging out and doing a recovery cookout where we're grilling hot dogs or something like that, or, doing a formal panel where we do Q&As or anything like that. Can we go to the next slide, please? Harm reduction. So this is our life-saving, action arm. So we do a variety of harm reduction, which will be your safer use kits, safer injection kits, injection alternative supplies. So we do give out syringes, sharps containers, sterile pipes, anything and everything harm reduction we do provide. And we do a mail out system because we do see a lot of self stigma on people wanting to get help. And so we do an anonymous mail out system, so that way people can order these supplies, and that way they can get this stuff at home, be safe, and use it for free, and feel comfortable getting their supplies from us. We also, provide our information, just whether it's a peer recovery support specialist phone number. We give out information on Never Use Alone, the hotline, the Brave app, anything you can think of that will, let somebody be safe while they use. We're trying to be all about it. Next slide, please. So theme distribution, this is how we can engage people that kind of don't understand the spectrum of harm reduction. And so we do almost like a subscription box, it seems like. So we started originally with a college safe box. And so this came with an HIV test kit, condoms, fentanyl test kits, Plan Bs, educational material. And then we also threw in like a box of ramen, just so that way people, had kind of a little bit of fun. With harm reduction. And so this actually shifted a lot of mindsets to where parents were ordering these for their kids because they wanted their kids to be safe. And it could have been like the same parents we were talking to a month before, where they're like, oh, my kid doesn't do drugs. I don't have to worry about it. But now they're realizing, what scenarios people will use this stuff for. Snag bags was our Valentine's Day thing. So snagging is a native term for like hooking up. And so we did that. It was the exact same supplies. We added breath mints and stuff, just so people can stay intrigued by what our next box was. And now we have people actually like asking us what the next box is, what the next box is. And so for recovery months, we do recovery packs and overdose prevention packs. Recovery packs are mainly for our clients. So it does come with Wellbriety books, sweetgrass, cedar, abalone shell, and some coals, because traditional medicine is healing. And so that's what we use our recovery packs for. but the list goes on and on and on about our theme distribution. But hopefully, somebody can get some kind of uh, ideas of what if they want to start a mail out system. You guys can start with some theme like that. Next slide. Peer support. You want to chime in? Bear,
Yes,
time to shine.
yes. Well, with being a peer, being from this community, being able to get back, give back in a positive way. I mean, to show that our community, that we do recover, we are able to, make that change as long as we're willing to, do what it takes. And it when I got sober, it was my dream to come back and help my people. So just being able to connect with, the next person that is suffering, being able to come back, and more than likely I know the person because I probably used with them, or know them through, whatever the scenario was. I probably know that person because I was in that world for 20 plus years. So being able to connect with the person, because I've seen where people that don't have the same lived experience try to connect with these people, and they could be telling them something and it could be very important to that person, and the other person doesn't recognize it because they've never been in that position. So being able to approach a person and be like, I know exactly what you're going through because I've been there. I've been there, and I did something about it. I found a way out, and we believe in recovering out loud. That's like a new thing, amongst people in recovery, is recovering out loud. Because if there's one thing I've figured out about the Native communities, is that whatever epidemic is going on, Native Americans are usually hit the hardest. So I felt like it was time. I heard it in California, recovering out loud. When I got home, I just brought that same mentality with me, because I felt like, the old way of recovering was real hush hush, anonymity, that was a big thing, so that's how people approached it. But I'm like, our people are dying at alarming rates. We need to try something different and show people that this thing, if I can do it, then anybody can do it. Because, you know, uh, the same community that I gave such a hard time, is also the community that, I came back and to start talking about the generational healing.
Mhm.
We all know what the problem is, but let's start talking about some solutions. So I'm living my dream basically. I get, it's not work to me if you enjoy what you're doing. So
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Can we go to the next slide? I think it's more peer support. Yep. Barry's good at explaining what a PRSS does, what it is. I strongly believe like the key to a good PRSS is one from the community that you're serving. Like Barry said, half the time these phone calls, like they don't know his work number, so they don't know who they're talking to, and then they realize it's Barry, and he already knows who it is, and
yeah,
so there's already a connection that's made. There's already a trust that's there, and so it does help with that transition in from active use to active recovery, and so it is perfect. It's like a mentor, a sponsor, anything you
yeah.
want to use it as. It's just support. Next slide, please. And so yeah, so our PRSSs, so they do lead groups, they do provide one-on-one sponsoring, mentoring, support, and we like to have the PRSS be pretty much the intake specialist, if you will. That's the number we want people to call because they want that hope instantly. And so we do give out Barry's card all the time. He doesn't know it, but we every event we're giving out Barry's card because they want um, to have somebody they can confide in that truly understands what they're going through. And so we've seen a lot of success with doing that. And then Barry is good at being confidential. It's key because, there's a lot of people that are still, in that old mindset where they
Yeah.
don't want to know what others to know what they're going through. However, we do see that shift later after
Yeah.
they are doing well and everything. They will share their story at our speaker meetings or just at an event when they're with us, and they'll actually like share their story out to the public to give even more hope. Next slide, please. So Wellbriety is our bread and butter almost now.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to go into it? Me too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wellbriety, the wellness and the sobriety, that's where you get the Wellbriety. Don Coyes, the creator of White Bison Inc., he got sober through AA. Same way I got sober. I got sober through AA. But to me, it's kind of like the Native American approach to AA. It's just, the language is the same, the principles are the same. It's just that, the wording's a little bit more updated, because AA is kind of written back in the 30s. So it includes drugs and alcohol. AA is just for alcohol. So, the language is a little bit different, but the principles stay the same. So we see a number of our clients, are Native American. So we see that they're hanging on a little bit more to the Wellbriety because we use these medicines. We smudge, we sit in a circle, and we talk about drugs and alcohol. You don't just really focus on one thing. And the support we've gotten, the people that have just came out and just wanted to be a part of the group, but we also welcome everybody. If you look at the medicine wheel, it has the white, yellow, black, and red. That includes all races. We would never turn anybody away from, it's just like AA. You just need the want to not drink again or use again. So, I mean, it's became very important. We deal with a lot of clients that are scared to go to AA, and I'm not going to lie, that was kind of one of my stigmas, is thinking that, oh, because I'm not a Christian, I probably shouldn't be here. But, that was me at the time, not realizing that I was just finding another way to exclude myself from that group. But that's where I got sober, was in AA. And so, we do both. I go to AA and I go to Wellbriety. I'm a facilitator now. So it's we just had nothing but positive feedback for what we're doing in our communities. The plan is to have one in every single town that we service. So that would be like the ultimate goal. But right now, we're doing what we can where we can. So
Yep. Next slide, please. So we are actually doing them. I think we have 6 meetings a week. So we have 2 in jails for incarcerated Native Americans that are in BIA custody. And then we do 4 during the week in the evening time. So that way we get, everybody that's done with their work day, done with dinner, and then they're ready to talk, share, and do everything. And we do provide the books, the workbooks, the traditional medicine, everything. And then we now have more community support to where people will sponsor sweats or peyote meetings. And so we're seeing the fruits of our labor already through our community movements. And that, like Barry said, the goal is ultimately to have one in each town, because we do have, a lot of districts. We have, 4 legislative districts, and then they're split in 2 because of different tribal size. There's Cheyenne and Arapaho, and so we do have a lot of communities we do need to reach. Our little 6 groups is a good start, but you know, we are pushing. We do have just 4 people on our tour team, and then 3 facilitators that come from the communities to help provide these circles. And so we're getting more and more people that actually want to help volunteer. And so we're pushing to increase our footprint for Wellbriety services. Next slide, please. So the culture couch, if you guys can see our video, we are sitting on it. So this is our way to reach people, you know, nationwide or worldwide. Actually, we have people tune in from, you know, Spain, Hawaii, Alaska, all sorts of places, Germany. So this is every morning we do a Facebook and YouTube live, and so this is to spread words of encouragement through the Elders Meditation book, which is another White Bison book. It has new meditations for every day. And so this is, you know, Barry tying in his recovery experience, Domingo also tying in his recovery experience, Carmelo. I'll tie in if I ever show up on them, usually my Al Anon experience. And the podcast is the same thing, just a lot longer. We try to get as many community members on that. Now, you know, people are getting you're getting recognized almost
Yeah.
every event we come
Yeah.
to. People say that they tune in, and so it's now becoming like a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we started this in January, and we started, you know, just with an iPhone and a
iPhone.
Bluetooth microphone, and now we have, you know, a full-on setup. We've got people donating artwork to go in the back, and everything. And so we do get a lot of people that watch that, listen to that, that look forward to it. If we're late, we'll get, you know, a bunch of
Yeah.
messages of people asking where we're at, because this is kind of like their little mental health break in the mornings.
Mhm.
And
love it.
so it's something that's actually grown way bigger than we expected. We thought it would be, you know, one person maybe at most. And so now every morning we get, you know, 20 to 30, and then hundreds of people later on that watch
Yeah.
it after their work. And so this is just another way we're reaching communities, kind of spreading the word, because we do announce events during these little lives. You know, any kind of fundraisers that are going on, any events in other communities. And so we've seen a lot of positivity come from this.
For sure.
Next slide, please. So I think this is our last slide, actually. So cultural reintegration. This is one of the things we are pushing hard lately. So we have seen that the culture is the solution in our people. So we actually held a dance 2 nights ago, which was a dance highlighting recovery in our communities, and we had like 3, maybe 400 people show up in a tiny little building, and so we were, you know, packed in there.
Yeah.
But this was one of the best dances I think that we've seen.
Yeah.
And so we do have our own Gourd Clan, so it's All Nations Res Recovery Gourd Clan. So this that also started in January, and we have been invited everywhere
Mhm.
because there's a lot of gourd dances that go on, and people want us to co-host because they support our messaging. And so this is actually becoming a bigger avenue to reaching our communities and
Yeah.
building communities stronger, because we do get to share testimonies during these. And then now we're getting people sharing their testimonies of us at these dances. And so we welcome in all of our previous clients, our clients that are doing good. We invite treatment centers that want to come out, people in sober livings. This past dance, we honored a Wellbriety group in Oklahoma City and a family that runs that Wellbriety group.
Mhm.
And so we had, you know, 4 or 5 different tribes at least come out
That's
and show
beautiful.
support, so that way they can, you know, kind of get the same idea and try to bring this back to their communities.
Yeah.
We've seen a couple other tribes, for some reason, ask them for our blessing to start a gourd clan.
Yeah.
And so it's been pretty good seeing the effects that this has on them, and you know, us being able to be a part of one of our tribe's biggest powwows of the year, because of our messaging, and then having you know, our clients, you know, come back to a circle where they may have, you know, terrorized it a little bit. And then they were kind of shy coming back into this cultural aspect. And so that's why we welcome them. We always bring extra supplies so that way they can dance with us. If we run out, we let them borrow our own personal supplies so they can dance. And then gourd dancing is just, a piece. Like we were saying, sweats are a big thing. We sweat once a week, probably twice a week, actually. And we welcome all members in sobriety coming out, so that way they can get reconnected to something that they may have lost or may have never experienced. And then we've seen a lot of positivity come out of that from our people. I think that's the end of our presentation. I love Q&A because I feel like that's where people get the most out of it.
It's the meat and potatoes.
And so so if you guys have questions, please let us know.
Thanks so much to both of you. And yeah, if people want to raise their hand or put questions in the chat, the three of us will try and monitor that. We got a pretty big group here of over 100 people. But feel free to put up your hand and come off mute. Okay, I see Melinda.
Yes, I have a question about how would you get one started if there wasn't like a Wellbriety in your neighborhood? I'm from San Diego, California, so I'm not sure if there's one already here, or how would you get one started if there's not one in your area?
Yeah, well, you're the Cali guy, so I'll let you.
Yeah, we Sparrow Goudet, she's a Wellbriety facilitator. She's the one that does the training for Wellbriety all across the country. She came to our office and trained all of us and got us all certified. I can't remember exactly. I think she's in La Jolla.
Yeah, that's San Diego.
Yeah, so she's in La Jolla. I know they do have Wellbriety meetings, but all it really takes is a little bit of knowledge of the book. And they do have starter kits, Wellbriety starter kits on the White Bison Inc. Website. But Sparrow, if you're not aware of who Sparrow is, I'm sure if you got a hold of her, she would definitely lead you. Sparrow is a great person. Like, she is a really good person. So I know for a fact that she would be willing to help you out any way that she could.
And there is a meeting locator on Wellbriety. So you could look it up, and it might have a meeting in your area. You just haven't heard about it. And then whenever you do get your foot in the door and start your own meeting, you can add it to there, so that way it could be listed on. So all of ours are added, and then they do have the official facilitator courses. I think those are about $500. And then you do get your certification. There's a lot of different avenues too. So there's the 12-step, mending broken hearts, warrior down, and then there's some youth geared ones which we're working on, and then they just announced Well and On, which we'll also expand into. But your good starting point would be your 12-step program, and they do virtual trainings too, and then also in person.
Yeah, and also I know for a fact they have them in Orange County.
Yeah.
I was talking to the facilitator this morning.
Yeah.
So if you're not familiar with the Magic House in Anaheim, California, I know they're having a meeting tonight, actually. So,
thank you, Melinda.
Okay, thank you for that.
No problem.
We'll go to Elizabeth.
Yes, hello. So one, thank you so much for your time and for doing this presentation for us. It's nice to hear that on the other side of the coast, people are pushing that culture is medicine, culture is healing. I work in the south side of Minneapolis, where the opioid crisis is pretty big. Over here, our encampments and stuff like that. So I work hands-on with this. So I have just it's more of like an open question. We do have like relatives that well, whenever we do our community meals, we have our elders are our fire keepers, and we have medicine, so they're welcome, to come in. We go to powwows. But one thing that I have noticed is that our relatives that are in active use don't feel comfortable enough to come into these things because they feel they have to be sober in order to participate, as well, like with the sweat ceremonies and things like that. How do you guys feel about that? I know someone had told me that for the sweat ceremonies, they do have to be sober in order to attend, but sometimes I feel maybe that's what they need to get to that step.
Yes, for sure. I mean, to me, that's like how does that person, because I'm not gonna lie, in my addiction, I would do the same thing. I would show up and, take part. But to me, I was looking for that cleansing. I was looking for that peace of mind. I know that I needed the creator, and anywhere else I couldn't find him, but I knew he was going to be there. So, I think it's more of like the person that is maybe running the ceremony. I think that would be more of a question for them, because nobody was asking me at the door like, hey, are you sober? But I know when I left from there, I was, and it would cleanse me, uh, all the thoughts and worries that I had, I feel like I would be safe for the day, So, I mean, I think it's more of like, yeah, you don't want somebody coming in that's, reeking of alcohol, but I've also seen that happen at other ceremonies. I've seen that happen at a peyote meeting. This guy, they invited him right in, and the peyote sobered him up, and so there's multiple approaches to it, but I know that's where I look for the creator, and that's where I found him.
Yeah, and then last thing you want to do is be turned away from your own
Yeah.
culture when you're trying to find help.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so maybe if you have, a peer that is running, so they already know, or a peer that knows the guy that's running, whatever ceremony it is, that would be something they could talk about beforehand, or kind of get more of a comfortable welcome for that. Hopefully that kind of
Yeah.
helps.
Yeah, that was a good question. Real good question.
Yes, thank you. I don't see anyone else right now, so I'll throw in kind of a related question. We did a harm reduction summit a couple of years ago with tribal harm reduction summit, and heard about some resistance in tribal communities, particularly often with elders who resist certain types of harm reduction, medically assisted treatment, kind of along the same lines of what you were just talking about, like the belief that you have to have be clean, sober to meet the spirit. Have you, given all that you're doing with harm reduction, which is amazing, have you run into any resistance from parts of your community?
I would say honestly, the most resistance we've had was with an attorney, and that was just because he wasn't familiar with the current legislation. So in Oklahoma, we have House Bill 511, which does give immunity for harm reduction organizations, and so we've seen that was where our biggest friction was, honestly, because to be honest, last year we had, a lot of people overdosing. It was almost every day. So everybody gets tribal obituaries coming out. And so it was almost every day that we would see something. And it was somebody, less than 40 years old. And so I think we hit almost a breaking point of like, they're like, okay, you guys know what needs to be done. As long as, you're saving our people, it's kind of, yeah, they were just kind of okay with it. Like I said, like all of our governmental body, they were supporting us completely. Communities, I mean, we would see elders getting our harm reduction supplies for their kids. Not like young kids, but you know, somebody that was suffering that was maybe in their 30s and they were getting clean syringes or pipe for them. And so I think our people just kind of, you know, they knew that something needed to happen. We kind of explain it like it is kind of uncomfortable, but this is the biggest step you can take to saving somebody's life, is letting them know they're loved, and then providing these materials, and then also, you know, who to come to whenever they are ready for you know, some help regarding, you know, detox or treatment or anything like that.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
I am a lawyer, so I should have known. We have one question in the chat here from Tish, who asks, what advice would you give to a non-tribal person who wants to help?
Just wants to like volunteer. I mean, I feel like we have a lot of people that are non-tribal.
Yeah,
that don't-
like
yeah.
what I've seen, actually, sorry, but
Yeah,
what
okay.
I seen was you know, as long as they realize that, you know, each individual tribe is different, and maybe approach somebody, an elder or whoever, and, you know, try to be more culturally appropriate, you know, and figure out, you know, the do's and don'ts, you know, you know, because we're all different, you know, maybe figure out, you know, who you can turn to for advice. You know, we got a couple non-tribal members here in the morning. I take I smudge everybody in the whole building. You know, I offer it to everybody. And one of our co-workers, you know, she's non-tribal, you know, and she loves it. Every morning, you know, she enjoys it. You know, she enjoys that part. And, you know, it's just, she knows, like I've kind of explained to her, you know, why we do it, you know, the good intentions of it, and she loves it, you know, and she's became more aware of, you know, the do's and don'ts. So, you know, yeah, you know, it's that community support, you know, that we're talking about. You know, the opposite of addiction is connection. So, you know, just keep going, keep trying.
Yep.
You know, you'll find a way.
Okay, and I see Archiana asked if we could put your contact information, which was in the last slide. Maybe one of my colleagues could maybe paste those, at least
Yeah.
the emails in.
Yeah, you could just put
Um,
my email in there. I'll try to check my mail protector. It's super
there we go.
ridiculous sometimes. But yeah, anything you need help with, yeah, let me know.
Okay, did I see another hand up?
Yeah, I see hands and then 2 other questions.
Sorry, I'm trying to go back and forth with the chat. Anyone else with their hand up who hasn't asked the question yet, feel free to come off mic and ask Darren and Barry your question.
Hi, so I prefer not to be recorded, but it is what it is. So very important work. I had been thinking of and speaking about the addiction, how it was inflicted on our Native communities over time, and so much harm and trauma that it has caused. So it's so good to hear of this work that you are doing. This is amazing, and I would love to participate and join hands in that for the healing and empowerment of the people. People deserve that. And secondly, so please do share your emails and I'll share mine. And secondly, as you said, and as we all know, connection is critical. So there is a lot of other side, so people being isolated and purposefully at times. And then difficult situations or traumas or addiction, which can be self-medication, then for that to affect the person, but then the support system being removed or interfered with, whether it's family or friends or positive engagements, education, like all of that being taken away or removed or interfered with, or job or purpose or income, meaning, right? And especially family relationships, when those are undermined and attacked and removed for all kinds of reasons by all kinds of forces. So want to talk to you about putting that in place, and even for me personally, like for our family members, especially for minorities. So to undo that, that's at work.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Another question in the chat is, do you find that you're doing a lot of education to people who are reconnecting to their culture and weren't raised with traditions?
For sure. I think part of this Wellbriety thing, it helps you find your identity. I have a lot of friends like that. I'm from a very traditional community. It was very small traditional community. Then I moved to a, kind of like a metro area compared to where I grew up. I grew up in a square mile town. So then I moved to, the big city, if you will, and had friends who, never even knew what it meant to be Cheyenne and Arapaho. To them that only meant that you drank for 3 days and you fight. So I see them people getting sober now. I see them people wanting to find a better way out, and they found they're looking for that connection. So us having this Gourd clan has provided a way for them to get involved. Maybe they left their culture, maybe they want to come back, or never experienced that. But as we all know, there's a lot of healing that goes on around that drum. So, just being able to provide that space or that opportunity, we get a lot of people that are, still like, I've never done it before. We just keep encouraging them, come on, come on out, we'll always have a gourd for you, we'll always save you a space. So, we see that a lot. And then once they get, once it happens, then
They're hooked.
yeah, that's it. That's all it takes,
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, we even had Milo Smith, a comedian, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he came out, never gourd danced before. We pretty much made him gourd dance.
Dressed him,
Yeah,
yeah.
dressed him and everything. He's like, I've never done this ever. And then and that encourages somebody, that's also never done gourd dancing and
Yeah.
stuff. So that way they know they're not alone in it being their first time. And we have seen people like they just wanted to see what it was like, maybe like watch on the side.
Yeah.
But after, we were like, hey, come stand with us, dance with us. Then
Yeah.
they connect, and then they want more and more. Then they start going to sweats and
Yeah.
all that stuff. And so, yeah, they do have a lot of people that haven't had a cultural experience. And so that's why we're trying to, kind of give more people that experience.
Yeah.
All right, great. Do we have any other questions?
I see one that was a little bit earlier. I'll just read it. It says, what is a tool or resource that
You beat me
absolutely
to it.
love to have for success, and what keeps you up at night? In other words, what do you need more of?
More
I
toward
would say,
dollars.
yeah, I would say people. So like we said, our big goal is having these community meetings pretty much almost every night of the week. So we do a lot with 4 people that actually work for Tor. I would say
Yeah.
actually work, but and then we have 3 additional that do a lot of heavy lifting, and that's just because they want to help their communities. And so we're seeing how much impact one person can make in a community that, they live there. Cause like I said, like our area, it takes us an hour just to get to one of the closer communities. And so there's some that are, 3 hours away, and us doing a meeting there every night is kind of unfeasible. But if we do see the local communities banding together with us, which we are seeing, it's just, it takes time. That's the one thing I think we would need more of. Uh, but like I said, we're seeing it happen. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. Also, all of the very small communities, the rural communities, the drugs can make it there, but it's hard for us to get our Narcan there.
Yes.
So it's like that's the pushback that we get from these different communities, smaller communities, who don't want to acknowledge that there's, a fentanyl problem happening right in front of their face, and they don't realize it, not knowing that this stuff, the Narcan only saves lives. We've lost way too many, to Narcan. To fentanyl. So, in places that I know the drugs are getting to, but our Narcan isn't, that really bothers me. So,
Yep. Yeah, that's another thing is a lot of destigmatizing. But yeah, we're still out there, just not in every community. We do have nine mini fridges filled with Narcan in our community, spread out at our community buildings, and so we have seen people take it, save their brother, and
yeah,
it's out of nowhere that we hear about it. We have 5 vending machines. They're actually going away because our state is removing vending machines to redistribute stuff, but we'll put new things there to keep our Narcan availability.
another
So
avenue.
yeah, so our harm reduction, we just want it to be more spread out, and then that way we can reach it. That's why we shifted to a lot of mail outs, because there's a lot of communities we can't reach persistently, but if we can, deliver supplies to them, we will absolutely do that.
That's great. Thank you. We're running down toward the end here. I just had one other quick question. At our Tribal Recovery Summit a year ago in Dallas, and I've heard of a couple other instances since, we're seeing peer recovery specialists that are getting, additional education or certification to become a tribal, peer recovery specialist. I know in Oregon, the state even recognizes that separate category. Is any of that taking place in Oklahoma? And then what do you do? Obviously being from the community is the biggest thing, but are there any kind of additional steps you take with your peers to give them that, cultural awareness and sensitivity?
Honestly, all of our peers are from
Yeah,
our area. They're actually active in our Wellbriety stuff before they want to become a peer. Oklahoma does, if anybody's from Oklahoma here, they do pretty much waive the fee for PRSSs for tribal peers. And so if anybody needs tribal peers, what we're doing is we're having these peers volunteer for us so they can get a free certification, and then they're actually gaining employment outside of us, but still coming back to us because step 12 is service, and so they think serving their communities where they're getting the most out of their recovery. And so we haven't seen any additional stuff. We do try to get them through the Wellbriety curriculum, and so that's just an added thing so that way they can start their groups. Most of them, you don't it's not a mandatory thing, but it is good to know the full facilitator guide. But yeah, other than that, we're happy with dirty records like berries. Yeah. And so because we do see that we do get more support from people knowing people in the past and then now seeing what they've turned into. And then so as far as that, it's just same old stuff.
And just one final thing, I know nationwide, thankfully we're seeing a little bit of a dip in overdose deaths. Are you seeing that in your community?
We're hearing it. So
Mhm.
yeah, we've heard the local fire departments have said they haven't responded to nearly as many as overdose calls as they had before. like I said, we got 126 reports from our areas of people preventing death. So another metric we recently started tracking was people finding fentanyl in their substances. For some reason, we didn't think to track that, but that is another life saved. And so we've seen a lot of reversals and I would say prevention of an overdose, just an inadvertent one. So we have seen a good trend of a lot less deaths. There's still not none, which is the goal, but it is a lot less than what it was before.
Yeah, and I also think that the awareness.
Yeah.
I mean, just the awareness alone, like, hey, if you're getting, even in one instance, there was a dispensary here in Oklahoma that found fentanyl on their marijuana. I mean, we're just bringing out the awareness, like, hey, one pill can kill. Be safe. Test whatever it is you're buying off the streets. You can't trust anybody. So I think just the awareness of people seeing the results of hearing about these reversals and all seeing all the Narcan everywhere. I think it just brings it, it destigmatizes what we're doing.
It's now normal to carry Narcan, and we see that in our communities versus when we do an event in general public. So we actually got invited to every concert that the casino holds because they like our Narcan, and we were the first casino to get a Narcan vending machine in there. And so we see that population is a little more shy when it comes to getting Narcan or fentanyl test kits. But whenever we come to our communities, they look forward to us and then like come right up to our table, are super happy.
Yeah.
They're the ones passing out Narcan for us sometimes, like because they're aware, they know what Narcan does, how to use it, all that stuff. And so yeah, we're seeing, a shift from, what before we started harm reduction stuff.
For sure.
That's great. I hope that continues. We're just about out of time. Kristen put the survey in the chat again. If you could please just take a minute and fill that out, we'd really appreciate it. And special thanks to Kristen and Grace for assisting with this. And a special big thank you to Darian and Barry for presenting for us today. It gives me a lot of hope and inspiration. And I love to hear about programs that are working, that are successful, and are leading people into recovery.
Yeah, thank you. Just put in a good word for us for this next tour grant that's this week. But yeah, thank you.
It should be any day, and I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Nice.
About it, and thank you again for everyone who attended, and hope you'll take a look at the other events for the remainder of Recovery Month, including the simulcast of the awards show tomorrow. Thank you again. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. Have a good one.